Neil Balme, A Tale of Two Men, written by Anson Cameron, is a book that I will be reading. And the great man has joined us in the studio to have a chat about it and other stuff. Go, Balme.
Jeeper, how are you?
Very nice to see you.
Yeah, lovely.
I asked the question. I didn't know the answer. Did you write this or did you have it written about you, and how much input? Oh, you've clearly had input. I've just had a quick flick. It's outstanding.
Yeah, it's really a footy story about my life, written by Anson Cameron, who's a mate of mine. He's a beautiful writer. Carmel and the kids were trying to convince me this is a good idea, and you know me well enough to know, so, I don't think no.
That's why I asked. Yep.
And then they sort of, Anson's sister lived across the road, and they said, well, what about if you got, because I'd read all his books and I was a good friend of his, what about if we got Anson to write it? Yeah. And that's when I started to take it a bit seriously. So I had a few chats to him, and he had never done anything like this before. But
he hasn't written autobiographies?
No, he was keen to do it. And he's done a wonderful job, writes beautifully. And I'm really pleased we've done it now. And funny, when I asked, I said to Brendan Gale, this bloke's going to talk to you about me, and I'm apologetic about it all. And he said, don't apologise. I said, the truth is, you've been involved in 50 years in footy and involved in so much stuff, it'd be irresponsible not to write it. And that's when you think about it.
It's a great record.
Yeah,
the two men. Good. Who are the two men?
Well, the obvious two men are obvious when you go through the story, because the bloke who played looked to be a touch mad.
Yeah. I barracked for Richmond back in those days, Balme.
And the bloke who's an administrator seems to be reasonably logical. I think there's two different blokes, and that's probably true, which is... And when I had to go back to think about what I was thinking when I was playing, and it was at Richmond in those days, it was do or die, and it was us. It was all about us. It wasn't about the other. And do what you do for your mates. And in the back of my mind, I think I did what I thought my teammates needed me to do, what they needed me to do, and that was impose myself on the opposition and try and intimidate them. If they were intimidated, it's their problem, not mine. Yeah. But the reason it's A Tale of Two Men is that's not really my personality. Yeah. I've never had a fight off the field or whatever, but on the field I felt that's what I should do, and it was reasonably effective. And when you look back at it, and I look from a pure footy point of view, you think, it's not really all that fair, but that's what we felt we needed to do at the time. So it helped us be a better team.
When you went back, did you recognise that bloke?
Oh yeah.
No trouble recognising
I'm not ashamed. I'm not particularly proud necessarily, but I'm not ashamed of it. I know exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it, and I was very competitive, and I put myself at risk as well. We all did, and when you play footy, I mean that's where I think footy's gone mad now. You take a big risk when you play footy. I mean, you can tackle a bloke and get reported for tackling him too hard. That's not possible.
There was going to be a bump that was too hard last week, thankfully, that didn't get...
It's madness, isn't it? And I understand kind of why, but it doesn't make any sense to me. But what was the question again?
No, that was the question. I saw Gary fumbling through the book. He went straight to the back to see whether or not he had any mention in there at all. Have you written about him?
Six mentions. The way you describe yourself then, so when you get a new coach, which Balme took over, which was still very slap bang in the middle of my footy career and all my close mates, obviously, so you've got this anxiousness about you. Go, who's coaching us? Because this is really important to us. And Balme was from Adelaide, obviously, and we didn't know a lot about him. So you go and do your homework, and the stuff that comes up is the stuff you're talking about. Your coaching career over there was, Nat, I'm sure that's in the book with Nord, is like legendary status. So we're excited about that. But then you saw that, you thought, shit, we're going to get this bloke who's going to come in.
Which bloke are we getting?
Grab us by the throat and throw us up against the wall here. But I describe you as you're scholarly, like you're so well read, and I enjoyed talking to you stuff about other stuff apart from footy as much as I did footy. Were you embarrassed? Did you go back and look at any of this and go, or is that the lens that we need to make sure we're very have got perspective on seeing it through footy back in the 70s, early 70s?
Yeah, I accept reality as reality, and footy was different then, and life was different then, and that's what we did. Yeah. And I know that I'm a relatively logical person. I never played with any anger or.
No, so it was calculated.
Yeah, that's what I thought I had to do, and I had to play that way, and I had to impose myself on the opposition because we needed to win, and that was my job. So I'm not. It doesn't. I'm not embarrassed about it. No.
So coaching, the footy career is it's really successful. Then coaching over in Adelaide, was it always something that you thought you would pursue, and why were you good at it?
I'd never thought about coaching at all, but I was only 27, 28 anyway, so shouldn't be thinking about playing. But because my knees were no good, I stopped early, and I was lucky that Norwood approached me to coach because I'd never really thought about it. Although in those days we had real jobs and were part of the community, so if you finish footy, you finish footy, and you accepted it. But Norwood approached me to coach them, and so I went back to Doug Hayward, who was my boss at Renown at the time here, and I said, these guys want me to go and coach. I think I might go to Adelaide. I might have to leave work. And he says, don't resign, stay with us. So I was lucky enough to stay with the company I was with. I started a sales office, and we finished up, we had a factory and 60 or 70 people working for us in the end. So I had two, genuinely serious jobs. But from a footy point of view, I'd never really thought about coaching much. And I was just so lucky I went to somewhere like Norwood because they had people like Wally Miller and John Wynn and Michael Taylor and these guys. I had so much to learn about footy because when Tommy coached us, it was really, if you thought about it, you're finessing.
Yeah.
And, we know now that you have to think about footy because, footy's totally different now, but we hadn't got to that point. So I was lucky that I got to Norwood and I learned so much about what South Australian footy was like, and it's a different game. And there's a bloke called Jack Odie who coached, who was a legendary coach, and they just coach slightly differently. And there's all this stuff that happens, and you can actually control it if you understand it, rather than just head over the ball, kick it as long as you can. So I was quite lucky. I hadn't really thought that much about, or hadn't really thought about coaching at all. And then all of a sudden I've got all this stuff in front of me. So I was very lucky that I was at Norwood. They were really helpful to me.
Would you be better suited to coaching today, do you think, than what you were back in that time when you coached Melbourne?
I could sort of talk myself up a bit, but I think I was a bit ahead of my time. I took into account people much more than the coaches did then. It was very much blame and shame, and you made me look like a bad coach, you mongrel. Rather than now, you say, well, okay, how can we help you get better, etc. So I think I sort of got it early, I must admit.
But when you came, you were pure. So I used to, I'd miss a few games from injury, and I'd sit in the box and watch. You loved the game. You would.
Oh, I still do.
You'd turn around and in the middle of coaching and want to talk about Schwartzy doing it. Did you see what about that? And you go, yeah, but the game's on Balme. So did you get?
I realised I couldn't influence it.
Yeah. Did you get a bit jaundiced by the end of it, like all the politics? And I know.
Probably. Probably. I mean,
that what wore you down.
I believe in the book. Even Wally Miller said at the end of the Norwood time, he said, I wasn't as sort of engaged or as happy as I had been, and it was probably time to move on, which made sense. So it does get to you, but it's very challenging. I mean, you've got an enormous responsibility to all these players who are with you.
Yeah. And
if it's not quite working, I mean, someone is responsible, and even though Essendon say Ben Rutten's responsible for everything bad that's ever happened at Essendon is not true, but the coach is very responsible for it because he's very close to all these players. It's very challenging. I don't know whether I was really cut out to coach. I'm probably more cut out to be the footy administrator, the one a step above in a sense.
Because excuse my language, the bullshit that used to get in the way was what frustrated you most. Like if you were just to purely coach and involve yourself with the players, it would appear to me that you would have coached for longer.
Yeah, probably. Do
you think there's you've worked with all different coaches, and Bomber Thompson obviously down Geelong, and Damien Howard, successful periods of club's history. Is there a personality trait, do you think, that runs through successful coaches?
I think it's accepting that they don't know everything is the most important thing they can do, so they can use their people. What tends to happen is the bloke who wants to be in charge of everything. It's a challenge because you can't know everything, particularly in today's footy. There's so many things that are happening. You can't necessarily know everything. You've got to realise, okay, how can I use these people to help us achieve what we've agreed that we want to achieve? And I think that's one of the real strengths in it, because when I went down to Geelong, Balme had been involved in all the stuff, and my job was almost to say, take all that away, just let him coach, so that he can help the players be as good as they can be. And we were pretty successful doing that. And I was able to, Steve Hocking and I were able to do all the other stuff with Cookie. And even I think even Damien in 16 was too hard on his players. Is the feeling there was, not too hard, but it challenged them too much. But they got to love you. They got to want to play for you. And so he did. He pulled back a little bit, and I was able to support him in some of the other stuff as well, I think.
Coach, a player coach, general manager of footy, senior club. What a guru! You've done all those roles.
Senior club advisor.
Senior guru. Rate them in. So, you know what our audience is. They're just lovers of sport and footy. Rate them in importance at a footy club. Give us, some will say, the recruiter's more important than the coach because the coach can't coach if you don't get the players. So where does it sit in the hierarchy? And if you're starting a club from scratch, the first job we've got to get right is this, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that.
I think the first job you've got to get right is the attitude of the club towards the expectation of what they want. Agree with what you're trying to do. Work out what values that you live for and how you want to do it.
So beyond the premiership, like everyone wants to win.
Everyone wants to. Of course, they want to win. But you can't win them all. But it's about how do we behave? How do we treat each other? How do we encourage each other? How do we help each other? It's almost that.
How do you establish that?
Oh well. That's, fortunately we were lucky enough to have, the Ray McLeans and the leading teams and the Jared Murphys and all these people. And they've got processes to follow and they can help you do it. But it's really just you talking to all your people, say, okay, what do we want to do? But that's my opinion anyway. I think because particularly in our game, it's only people. There's nothing else. And if your people work together, I'm telling you, you're very, very powerful.
Yeah. So you're putting culture, for want of a better word,
yeah, I think so.
At the very start, and so invest in time in getting the culture.
Yeah,
right.
I think so. Yeah, and that then you've got to make sure you've got the right people in place, and you won't get the culture right if you haven't got the right people in place. So they're all just as important as each other. But I think we need to get that in our mind first in a funny way, and then the most important person at the footy club is the player.
Yeah,
the talent of the player.
The bloke who's picking up the ball. He's CEO.
And you need a lot of good ones, don't you?
You do. And that's why it's such a wonderful game, because there's so many variations in it.
And you've been privileged in lots of ways to sit back and be involved with some of the greats, like some of the modern day legends of footy. When you're talking I'm talking players from this point of view. You played with them in your day, Royce and KB and all these boys.
Yeah,
and now you're sitting back and having had experience with Selwood and Pendlebury and now Martin. I mean, it's you've got no wonder the book needed to be written. Yeah, a bloke called Ablett.
There's a few good ones.
So you're right. They're the most important part of it.
He was working towards that.
Not in that level.
Hey, this is a question off the text. Does the book take 1 to 2 weeks to read, like every injury Balme has ever been asked about?
1 to 2 weeks would actually take 38.
And now is the Joseph Gutnick. That's the.
That's the unpleasant time.
I wasn't looking for myself.
Is there a chapter in there?
I was going straight for that chapter.
Okay.
So that was a unique experience, Balme, and he was a unique man. That's a generous term. Do you think we'll ever have a coach sacked halfway through a second quarter again?
Probably.
On air, on radio?
Probably.
Jeez.
I hope not. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? But that was, that's the challenge of running a footy club, though, because, we're at the Melbourne Footy Club and we were going pretty well. All of a sudden we have a few injuries and drop off a bit and all of a sudden look like we can't play. And it's the end of the world. And it was a really challenging time. And then we have the strategic planning exercise that says that if we had a lot more money and a lot better players, we'd be a better club. I mean, don't be a genius to come up with that. So, okay, if we go and grab all of Hawthorn's money and all their players. And then I think I was with you, where are we going? And we couldn't, the board decided they're going to go that way, so we've really got to accept that that's, we've got to look like we supported publicly. So that was very challenging. And then that didn't happen because Scotty stood up and said it's not going to happen. And then Joe bobs up with his money, and so they've got to give him all the power, and he knows bugger all about footy, so it was the end of the line for me.
Part of that will be an interesting chapter that will lead. So,
but in a funny way, it's the best thing to happen because it made me realise, don't coach, do something else.
Yeah. So that's right. So you are looking fit and healthy, and you had a couple of health issues, but you look great. So is your days of being, I don't know what you call yourself, what is it, footy senior club advisor, does that extend itself to another club coming to you and saying, hey, I love what you're talking about, I know you know what you're talking about, you know what successful clubs need, come and advise for us?
Oh, look, I'm happy now that Richmond can be my legacy, so I'm not looking for that. But you never put anything out of the way. I mean, Adelaide was seriously talking to me a couple of years ago, and then I did get a bit crook, which is why I didn't consider it any further. I was really chuffed by that and humbled by that, and it made sense, and we love Adelaide, so I sort of took it seriously, but I didn't really want to leave Richmond, and they didn't want me to leave either, so in a way it turned out the best. So, no, I'm 70 years old, so I'm not really looking for a new career.
But he's saying there's a chance.
Hey, just quick, are they a genuine chance, you believe? You watched them closely over the year. Are they a genuine chance to fire up again and give the grand final a shake this year, the Tigers?
There's no doubt our best is very good, and our best is good enough to compete with all of them. We just haven't quite played at our best often enough this year. We've given back virtually 5 games in lots of ways. But the attitude and intent has been terrific the whole time. You know, the boys are genuinely enjoying training and doing all the stuff they're doing. So we're a genuine chance. Yeah, now, we play the first game against Brisbane, go to Gabba and play, well, you know, it's a 50-50 game, so you've got to accept that. But I think we're pretty good. Yeah, certainly our best is good enough to challenge them all.
I don't think there's anyone arguing with you on that one. And last one, and it's great to have you in here, Neil Balme, A Tale of Two Men by Anson Cameron, and you can get it wherever you get your books. Adam Kingsley, where it's really
it's a great story, isn't it?
So
Yeah.
we're just debating, Tim and I, about staying on at Richmond, and philosophically, where are you placed with that, and how does that work?
Me personally.
Well, with Adam to stay on and coach Richmond.
Oh,
the
no,
finals,
yeah, definitely. Oh,
So
should
is there-
stay. Absolutely.
Isn't
yeah.
his head in giant stuff?
Oh, yeah, but he's not. He's intellectually strong enough to be able to cope.
You've
Yeah.
coached. I mean,
Yeah.
doesn't it
Oh,
consume
no.
you?
No, he won't be consumed by
Doesn't-
GWS yet. No, but he's so involved with us, particularly nowadays when blokes have their area to coach and all that. They're not just assistant coaches who sit back and wait to see something happen. They're actually running whatever they're running. No, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. It'd be totally wrong not to. I would have thought.
Great, that's enough for me.
I'm hoping I'm agreeing with what we've decided.
No. We were debating about whether or not an assistant who's just been appointed senior coach and waited 16 years,
Unless he wants to go.
Yes, sure.
If they do, sometimes they do, but I'm sure he won't, and no, he should finish with us. Yeah.
Good luck with the Tigers.
Yep.
Good luck with the book, A Tale of Two Men. We'll continue to push that. It'll be fantastic reading.
Well done.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
Thanks, guys.
Great to see you.
Really appreciate your interest.